everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Sunday Sit Down, the show where anything goes and nothing is left behind. As always, I am Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome, and I want to welcome you guys once again for joining me for another excellent topic, and more importantly, a great YouTuber to discuss it with. And I gotta tell you, it's so weird because I feel like I haven't done one of these in so long. It's actually been over a month. It's so weird, but I always appreciate coming back to you guys and talking to you guys about an excellent topic. And to join me is one of my very good friends here. We have been friends in the community for quite a number of years, and she has also been a major supporter of my channel, especially when we go over certain things based around the topic of discussion that we are bringing to the table today. So she is a fellow booktuber, a huge anime fan, and pop culture junkie just like myself. So I want to welcome Shaela from Shaegeeksout. Good afternoon, or is it still morning by you? I have no idea, Shaela.
It's noon here, so I would say afternoon is fine.
So we just hit the afternoon mark. But anyway, I just want to say thank you for joining me on my show today.
No problem.
Excellent. All right. So just before we begin with the questions, I just want to see what's going on because we've got people in the comments. Everything is starting to begin. I see April from April Sarah. She has joined me on my show before, and we had such an amazing time discussing what we did, which was YA and YouTube. So either way, the topic of discussion today, I feel, is very important because right now, in the real world, and also to a great deal on social media and the YouTube community, there is still a great deal of division, and it's all because of the fact that there are so many hot button topics in the world today, and the issue with them is not necessarily the topics themselves, but rather it's the dialogue that comes from said topic. And sometimes it's very biased. Sometimes there's not even a dialogue. And to me personally, I kind of find that frustrating. And so I wanted to bring Shaela to talk about this specific topic because there was a major event that happened in the booktube community a couple of years back around the topic of diversity, and people who actually just wanted to give a different point of view were shot down and shunned, and nobody was showing true wantings to understand where those people were coming from. I decided to make a video about it because it was something I didn't know, and it was something that I felt was important to talk about. And Shaela was one of the first few people that actually made her own video in response to what I said. So I appreciated the fact that you were also willing to, dare I say it, put your YouTube reputation on the line just to say what was on your mind for the sake of saying it.
Well, I think that's part of why conversations like this get really interesting, because YouTube is a free space where we can share our opinions on anything. So it shouldn't be a point ever where you can't talk about what you honestly and truly feel. I mean, as long as you're not being malicious towards another group of people, I think anything you have to say is important and relevant. But I also think people can blow things way out of proportion that definitely don't need to be blown out of proportion. Sometimes people need to check themselves at the door before they make comments that are rude and snarky when they don't know the whole situation.
Yeah, and I promise you, Jussie Smollett is not listening while you're saying that. But we'll get but that's another can of worms that I don't want to throw out there right now. But anyway, as always, I've got 7 questions for my guest, and the first thing that we always do is we always like to go to the beginning. So the question that I have for you to begin is, Shaela, have you always been someone who wanted to discuss controversial topics or hot button topics? And if not, what was it that made you change your mind?
That's an interesting question. For those who don't know, I'm going into all these questions blind, so I've had no time to prepare them. So just kind of going off the cuff here, but I would say I've never been the type to necessarily shy away from something that other people might not necessarily agree with, but I'm also very cautious in approaching people because I come from a religion that is very widely bashed and pushed aside and talked about horribly on many levels. So I'm very careful and cautious in what I say and how I word things typically, because I try to not rock the boat with everybody else, but I'm also not afraid to put my opinions out there.
Yeah, I will definitely agree with you there. I mean, I just remembered growing up that you had a voice, you had the ability to say what you wanted to say, but you had to say it, especially in a public space. There was always a person telling you have to say what you want to say within reason. Because do you want to offend people? The answer is no. Even back then, you didn't want to offend people. There were people out there in the world of entertainment that just like to offend for the sake of offending. And did they get hit with ridicule? Sure. I mean, heck, if you are younger out there and you're watching the show, go do a Google search on Andrew Dice Clay and you'll see what that's all about.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, and even going further back, type in a name called Lenny Bruce. Learn about some of these people and see that they actually made a career on the sake of talking about controversy and talking about hot button topics and just sometimes being flat out nasty for the sake of their act. And I think what's the funniest thing is about those kinds of people is that they seem to get a lot more publicity from the negative attitude towards them than the positive attitude towards them. I'll throw out another name, Howard Stern.
Oh gosh, Howard Stern.
I mean, I remember
Talk about a man of controversy right there.
I mean, I still think one of the greatest lines from one of my all-time favorite movies, which is Private Parts, is when the guys over at NBC are looking at his numbers, and Paul Giamatti's character is like, but if the people who hate him, why do they listen? And it was the same reason for the people that loved him, and it was, I want to hear what he'll say next. And that's also why controversy is a great way to bridge a gap and create conversation. I always feel that even though things can make people uncomfortable, there's always an opening for a common ground or a rational conversation. Because at the end of the day, are you going to agree? No. But is there anything wrong with agreeing to disagree? Not at all.
Amen. Praise bless. I completely agree with all of that.
So then let me ask you another question, and that is, how did you feel about, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be YouTube. It could be just in life in general. How did you feel about voicing your own personal opinions and coming out of your own comfort zone?
When it comes to that, it took me some time. As a teenager, my dad was the bishop at our church. And so I kind of kept a lot of my somewhat controversial opinions to myself for that reason until I was an adult and out of the house, and the reputation of my parents wasn't necessarily on the line anymore. When I got to that point, it felt very freeing, I guess you could say, to be able to express my opinion however I felt about it. In the YouTube space, I've never necessarily felt like I couldn't express my opinion. Sometimes I worried about expressing my opinion, but I never felt like I couldn't. And when it comes to subscribers and things like that in the YouTube space, things can get very finicky. And so a lot of people will hold back their opinions because they're afraid they will lose subscribers over it. But I have always been the kind of person that here in this YouTube space, I would much rather be transparent and myself and have like 10 subscribers than have millions and not be able to be my true self, if that makes any sort of sense.
There's a famous quote out there that says, I'd rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I'm not.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that, because I think where things changed for me was when I actually made the transition from high school to college, because I know that you brought up your faith earlier, and you think your faith is controversial, is cause of a lot of controversy, and people say things, well, the same can be said about my religion. Judaism is also, but you want to know something? If you're not within a religious sect, you really don't know until you actually sit down with someone and get to learn. So there's nothing wrong with asking uncomforting questions,
Exactly. And that's something I did do during high school. Despite my dad being my bishop at my church, I went and tried out and explored various other religions just because I was curious. I wasn't going to blindly accept everything my parents told me at that point in my life. And so
Yeah.
I tried a bunch of different religions, and I had a list of questions of things I wanted answered. And there isn't a single religion out there who can answer all of my questions. I'll state that right there. But I ended up settling on the one that was the most complete of the list, where they had an answer backed up either like in the scriptures or within the religion's doctrine that answered those questions.
Yeah, and getting back to what I was saying, so because
Mhm.
of the fact that I came from an observant family in my faith, I was, sent to private schools for the religion. I went to temple to pray every single weekend and celebrated all of the holidays within my religion. And so I sort of lived in a bubble, even though I knew that there was a great big world out there, and I knew that there was going to be a day where I was going to join it and learn to develop within it. When I got to college, that was my first exposure to everything else. So
Yeah.
sometimes I would say a line, or actually say something that is sort of offensive towards a specific stereotype. And the thing that I distinctly remember was nobody getting up in arms and berserk about it like they do today.
Right.
They're like, you really shouldn't say that, and here's why you shouldn't say that. See,
Exactly. Rather than
that's
going on this huge tirade saying you're a horrible, awful person because you said this one sentence.
exactly. And through that, I learned to shape myself and I learned to grow. I also learned that in Judaism, there are so many different ways that people observe the religion itself. And it was through that that I learned how to take the faith and mold it to where I don't feel that it's burdensome, and rather something that I appreciate and celebrate. I find it so funny that this is turning into a religious discussion, which is so good, because I do want to bring these types of things into future shows, but it's sort of helping. I have to say that it's helping. But
Yeah.
it was through that where I sort of started to learn about how to grow and how to understand where other people were coming from. I still feel that there is a great deal of learning to do, but going out of my comfort zone and then going on YouTube and voicing my opinions in the beginning, I welcomed the fact that if I said something about a movie that somebody loved and I just didn't like it, sometimes someone wouldn't know how to respond in a mature, reasonable fashion. But sometimes I would get this long comment of things that they said that I don't agree with this and that, you don't understand what you're saying. So then I just respond by saying, help me understand. Tell me why. I want to
Exactly.
learn. And that is something that I feel we're not getting too much of anymore. Although I do feel, especially in the last couple of months, there seems to be a lot more people out there that are trying to build bridges and not burn them. So I hope that that continues.
I hope so too. Along those same lines, when it comes to the booktube community specifically, it's made out that you're a pariah if you don't read certain types of books or don't look a certain way in the community. Thankfully, that's changing a lot now. But for a long time, if you weren't reading like the popular YA reads that everybody else was reading, nobody would watch your videos. Now that's not so much a big deal. I mean, the primarily what I reviewed on my channel last year were smutty romance novels because I wanted to. Those were the books I was enjoying at the time. I did review some other things as well, but that was primarily what I was reading last year. And so that is a lot of what I reviewed on my channel. And it's funny because in the last year, my viewership tripled because I was being true to myself and reading what I wanted to read. So between reading a lot more manga, which I hadn't read previously, and reading all this smutty romance, like my viewership grew. It didn't matter if I was reading the popular YA books or not. So I think there's this stigma in the community that you have to read what all the big core people are reading for people to notice you, but it's so not true. Read whatever you want, review whatever you want. People want you to be genuine and authentic and yourself in this community. So if you're not being that, no one's going to pay attention to you. They're like, "Oh, that's just another person trying to be like everybody else. I want somebody who's different."
Yeah, and
How
that's
many
one of the things.
times I see calls out there for, I need to diversify my YouTube subscription. Tell me who are your favorites and why. And they'll go and subscribe to a bunch of different people to try to diversify what they're being exposed to.
And they'll probably unsubscribe to half of those people because they suddenly realize that all those people are just not interesting to them. Because because when it comes to diversifying your subscriptions, it's really about the content and not about the actual physical appearances or the orientations of those people. And that's still something that I feel a lot of people in this community are still not understanding, because I really do not care, you know, what you are, as long as you give me something that I find entertaining. Now, I will say that I find myself geared more towards getting a lot more female content, because for some strange reason, I just find that the conversations that I have with women are so much more engaging. And to me, I just feel like I gain so much more when I talk to a woman rather than when I talk to a guy. That's just the way that I felt for so many years. Like, this goes all the way back to the days where I was actually playing World of Warcraft. I would specifically find female gamers completely by accident. And the best part is, when I would be talking to them and having conversations, I just say, "You're a woman, aren't you?" And they're like, "How'd you figure that out?" I said, "You're talking to me. We're actually having a conversation."
Exactly.
Which I find so healthy. And plus, I also feel that having a lot of women as friends is very important to me, so I know exactly how I'm doing in terms of my marriage. I need a sounding board. I truly need a sounding board.
And as long as she's not jealous of all your female friendships, you're still safe.
Oh, are you kidding me? I tell her
she seems super cool. Like, I'm not worried about it, but.
No, I tell her every single person that I speak to, and I would love for her to meet every single person that I speak to on YouTube, also because of the fact that I'd like her to make some friends as well. I mean,
and if I'm ever in New York, I hope we at least go to dinner or something.
She's a big reader. If she wasn't a teacher, she'd be a booktuber. I know it. I definitely know it. But
and your house would be full of even more collecting.
I think we have way too much of books as far as I'm concerned. Way too many books and not enough shelf space. But anyway, that actually leads into the next question. That is, even with the outcome, do you still feel that it is important, regardless of what ends up being the end game of a specific discussion or a debate on a certain area?
Say that one more time. It didn't compute in my brain.
No problem. It's the weekend. Our brains are still somewhat on the weekend off. So
exactly.
The thing was, do you feel that when it comes to talking about these topics, do you feel that it's still important to talk about them regardless if the outcome goes in the way that you don't want it to go?
Oh, absolutely. The outcome doesn't really matter to me when I feel passionate about something. If I feel passionate about something and I feel like I need to share this opinion, I'm going to share it and deal with the fallout because of that. I'm not afraid necessarily of the fallout. I mean, I'm not making any money doing YouTube. I do it just for fun. So if people don't want to be subbed to me, that's their choice and that's their decision. I'm not going to force them to. But it's one of those things that I'm going to share my opinion regardless. I have lost friends over sharing opinions, or I even lost a huge group of friends when I married my first husband because they all didn't like him. That should have been a big indicator from me from the beginning, but that's a different discussion for another day. Either way, I still made my decision and I dealt with the consequences of that decision.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that, because when I started dating my wife, I lost a whole bunch of friends in the process because they just didn't like her. But I was realizing at the end of the day that she wasn't the problem. They were the problem. Yeah. And it was so funny because I discovered through this that it was because of the fact that I was the only single person in the group. I was the one that was willing to give everybody else out there attention and just be there for them at the drop of a hat. When my wife, at the time, obviously my girlfriend, when she officially came into the picture, then all of a sudden, your
time, they didn't like that.
Yeah, but it wasn't just that. They also didn't like the fact that I was shoving everybody to the side because I wanted to study for my midterms and my finals and my grad school education. They felt that that was not important. So I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, they were the toxic people. They were the ones that were causing issues. And you know what? I'm okay. And quite frankly, I may not have that many friends in my life. I mean, YouTube is basically the place where I speak to a lot of people and really have a lot of friendships now.
Mm-hmm.
But in the typical day in my life, there is just barely any time for friends. You know, you're lucky if you have time for yourself. And if you have that time for yourself, you don't want to give it to somebody else. Unless it's your significant other.
Exactly. They're the person who gets all that extra time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I agree
At
with
least
you.
they should be. If not, then you need to reevaluate things.
Yes, I agree 100%. And also, in regards to outcome of topics, it's like, I never had any issues saying what I wanted to say. I mean, for crying out loud, do I get nervous? Sure. When I did my Oscar snubs this year and I basically dragged Black Panther through the mud because it got nominated for Best Picture, I was like, you know what? I don't care.
Well, full disclosure, I'm kind of with you on that. I was a little surprised.
Look,
I mean, I can understand why they did it, but yeah. Anyway.
Look, I will tell you the God's honest truth. Black Panther is a very, very entertaining film. It is one of the best in the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I will never compare that movie to 12 Years a Slave, Schindler's List, Gone with the Wind, Forrest Gump.
Right.
You want me to continue? I mean, like, how do you even compare? You cannot. Right. You cannot. Amen. And the funny part was, I saw one of my fellow film critics in the community talking about this whole thing, and she put in her comment sections, do you feel that they should make an award at the Oscars for the most fan favorite or the most successful blockbuster in the year? And I was like, they already have that award. It's called the Best Movie at the MTV Movie Awards.
Right?
I mean, honestly, if you do that at the Oscars, you are putting MTV's whole awards ceremony out of business.
Exactly. Because they are all about the fan favorites.
Yeah, but I personally just feel that there's no reason why you can't say what you want to say, because unless you are seriously going out there to hurt people's feelings, and basically if that's what you really is your purpose in life, then you really are an asshole.
Yeah, you're just a toxic human and you should just leave people alone.
It's the same thing when people just make these asinine comments in people's comment sections all because they just don't like what they said. I'm like, oh, and I say this to all my friends, but I never actually said this publicly, but I'm going to do that today. I always say, oh God, the basement virgins are at it again.
Oh Lordy.
Yeah, that's just the way it is. It's like there are just people in this world that just want to be miserable for the sake of being miserable, and the only way for them to truly be happy is to make everybody else just as miserable as they are. And even at the end of the day, it's not enough. So I honestly don't care if I make people miserable, because when I know I'm doing something truly wrong, I will stop myself and I will eliminate the thing. Like, I love the fact that I have all my original videos compared to what actually goes up on YouTube. And there are some times where I actually do let something really bad slip. And I'm like, oh boy, I don't know if I should put that in there. So I will take it out. It happens.
Exactly.
It happens because sometimes, you know, it's diarrhea of the mouth. Sometimes you just talk and talk and talk, and you're talking so fast, the words are coming out so fast, the brain is not catching you in time. So that's the last thing that you ever want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it is what it is. So let's go into the fourth question, and I think you'll appreciate this one. Let's talk about that first YouTube video that I mentioned just a little bit earlier in the program. When you recorded that video, knowing that YouTube as a whole was sort of going in this direction where we had to address these important topics and we had to try and create these conversations, did you think that that specific video that you made would be a one and done? Or did you feel that you should be bringing more to the table?
I definitely didn't feel like it was supposed to be a one and done. I never felt that. I knew I was always going to be careful as to the topics I chose to broach. I mean, there was probably a year or so where I didn't delve into the super controversial things going on in the community because it didn't feel right for me to talk about it. So it's one of those things where I knew I wasn't one and done, but I knew I was going to be choosy as to which ones I chose to put my public opinion out there.
Yeah, I also felt that after I decided to bring the diversity chat to my channel, I got to admit I was a little bit nervous. But then again, I actually talked about something a couple of years back that not a lot of people that I'm now friends with here even knew about, because I know for a solid fact that you weren't on YouTube when this happened. But back in 2014, there was a massive sexual assault scandal with big named YouTubers, both male and
Yeah.
female, that were basically seducing a lot of their younger fans. And I thought that it was very disgusting. And the thing that really hit me was the fact that these were older YouTubers. And I specifically wanted to make a statement saying, excuse me, yes, I'm an older person here, but I'm not one of those types of people that is trying to be a sexual deviant here. Like, I want to talk to younger people because I do want them to feel comfortable and know that there are older people out there that just want to make successful YouTubers out there. I mean, I have a couple of subscribers right now that are still in high school, and I still have no issue talking to them one-on-one as an adult. I want to treat them respectably, treat them as a fellow content creator, and give them any kind of advice that I can without hesitation, you know?
Right.
And
I think sometimes as an older, more mature person, we can come at it from a different perspective than they're able to see, because we've lived a little bit of life and we can be like, okay, well, have you thought about this, this, or this? And then they can kind of be like, oh, no, maybe I should think about those things before they jump into something that they're over their heads in.
Yeah, I mean, don't you feel, I mean, like, let's be a little bit logical here, which is one of the few things in this world that is frowned upon these days. I mean, if you are going into college, let's say, and of course, you know, when one is a teenager, one really doesn't like to associate with the parents, you know, it's just the way the teenagers are. But don't they feel that, like, actually knowing people that have gone to college, that have gone job hunting, that have actually gotten their careers done, don't you think that people would want to talk to these other people for some ideas, especially considering the fact that since their relationships are not as strong as, let's say, with their families or with their friends, they would also get a non-biased thought.
Exactly.
And I also think what is kind of funny is that my train of thought just officially got derailed. Yeah. No, it's like, oh, no, here it is. I actually am now talking to a whole bunch of YouTubers right now, even though my wife haven't gotten to this stage in life. I'm asking people about parenting.
Right. And that's not necessarily a bad thing to start getting some advice, so that you feel a little more prepared when you actually do get to that point with your wife.
And I also feel that it's a real honor that some of these people are actually younger. Because when an older person comes to a younger person, I think that's just as valid and important.
Especially because they have a different set of life experiences than you do as a parent. So they still have something valuable. It's not just age. They have valuable information because they have an experience that you don't have.
Exactly.
So I think that age is the epitome of the important factor in gathering information and acknowledging someone's relevance in the world. I think it can be any age, but it's just their set of life experiences.
And there shouldn't be jealousy. There should only be the wanting to gain knowledge. And after I made the diversity video, I didn't think that that was going to be the end, especially considering the fact that we obviously had the 2016 presidential election. There was so much that I was listening to, learning, understanding, seeing what people were getting right, seeing what people were getting wrong. And I was really keeping an eye and an ear out for all the social commentary that was basically flooding into the things that make me happy. And believe me, when all of the politics started going into movies and into music and into sports, I was frustrated. I was so upset because it was like, I was happy that I was a little bit more politically and socially aware, but my means for escapism We're now officially, they're gone. And look at the booktube community. Look at what happened with Sarah J. Maas in the beginning of all of this, you know?
Yeah.
And so I feel that when I hear social commentary, I like to throw a little dig in there with a review that I do, or I like to throw a dig in there when I do an update, because I still want people to know the Lawn Gnome is listening and the Lawn Gnome has something to say. I want people to know that I hear what you're saying is relevant, but now you're going to hear what I have to say and if I agree with you. And if you don't, let's talk.
Exactly.
All right, so we're making great time. Just going to take a small pause. I am just loving all the comments that I'm seeing here. I wish that I could engage a little bit more with everybody in the room right now. I also wanted to say that April Sarah, who's in the channel, she was also one of the people that made a response video after I did. So she was also one of the people on my support team. So I was very grateful that she had something to say afterwards. I think she made a video about a day after yours, by the way, Shaela.
Probably.
Yeah, so
one of the first like YouTube friends I made. So we ended up in some of those initial controversial discussions, I think we kind of ended up doing them about the same time, because we sometimes would learn about it on each other's channels and then go back to the original video and go from there.
Yeah, and you guys are doing a live show a little soon after this one, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, so you know where you got to go after this. So, as always, I just want to say to everybody that this video will get taken down a little bit after we officially come to a close at this hour, and I'm just going to add my intro and outro, and then I'm going to post it tomorrow, which will be the 25th of February at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and if Shaela wants, I will be sharing this video with her so she can have it posted on her own channel.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, because some people want it, some people don't, but hey, that's the beauty of freedom. You get to do whatever the heck you want. So
exactly.
Just don't cry fire in a movie theater.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. There's certain things that we have to remember within reason. But anyway,
unless you're the only person in the theater, then you can shout fire all you want.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. and even I don't want to try it. Because you have to remember
got away with it. It's okay.
Yeah,
I promise.
The projectionist is listening.
It's so automated. There's not a physical person in there.
Oh, but somebody's got to push the button.
Right, they push the button, they walk out.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. But that's
younger brother was assistant manager at a movie theater. This is why I know these things.
Well, anyway, let's get into the fifth question, and that is, how did you feel about the drama of BookTube over the most recent years? And do you truly believe that after all the topics that have been addressed, the controversy basically unfolding, people trying to reach across the aisle, do you feel that there has been any improvement, or has there been absolutely nothing that has been solved?
In some instances, yes, and in others, no. I mean, it seems like every couple of years there's some sort of hashtag fake reader girls, ignorant dude who come and make ignorant comments about the females in the BookTube community, and the girls lash out. Like, it seems to happen once every couple of years, and I think it's just somebody who's coming in that's new and ignorant that ends up making comments like that, and it ends up stirring up all that controversy all over again. But in other instances, like, you know, talking about adding diversity to novels, things like that, a lot of that is changing in the publishing world. So what the community has to say as a whole is affecting the publishing world. They are listening. And as creators, I do think people are actively seeking out YouTubers that are more in line with their personal preferences. I know lots of friends who are very avid about the people of color in the community getting plenty of attention. And so they tend to do shout outs and things along those lines to expose people to all of that. And they're subscribed to more people like that. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Like we said earlier, I am not the type to necessarily care what somebody looks like. It's the content of their character that I care about. It's never mattered to me the color of their skin, their race, their sexual orientation. None of that has ever mattered to me. And that's just who I am in real life that transitions to who I am here as well. So it's one of those things where I do think in a lot of aspects the community has grown and changed and morphed into something where those people who were so upset and felt so vehemently about a lot of those things can now find what they were looking for. And those of us who didn't necessarily care either way, we're still happy in the community as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my big issue in this whole thing was the fact that if you didn't actively seek out all of these things that people were talking about, you were not part of the solution, you were part of the problem. And that was where I strongly disagreed, because you have all the rights to be a part of something, you have all the rights to be against
To not be
something,
part of something.
and you have all the rights to be absolutely nothing and just move on to the next thing. I totally am on board with just doing, you being you. That's what I'm all about.
You do
But
you, boo. That's what I tell people all the time.
yeah, that's exactly the way I felt about it. And I just was so upset seeing that there were authors that were basically being bullied into doing all of this stuff. And I will bring up Sarah J. Maas again, because her court series got bashed, and then in a court of a court of Wings and Ruin, she basically gives in to the public, and they still hate her for it because she did it wrong. So the thing is, there's no way for these certain...
In this instance, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
And there are, unfortunately, some extremist yahoos that just will never be satisfied. And
exactly.
The problem is, and I say this to my wife all the time, the problem is it's the nuts that make the most noise. And because of that, the rational thinkers on either side of the coin are not getting their voice. But at the same time, do they really want to be heard? No, because they just don't want the drama. That's the thing.
Exactly. And that's kind of why, like, on my channel and stuff, I don't really talk about political things, because I just want to fly under the radar. I don't want to care. Like, I don't want people attacking me and coming at me because I think differently than them. And that's such a hot button topic that somebody's always going to come after you, whether it's 1 or whether it's 50, somebody's always gonna.
Yeah.
So I fly under the radar with all of that. I have my opinions, but that's when I choose to not necessarily, like, blow up all over the place.
But I think one of the few things that I also want to go back to what you said earlier about this one ignorant guy or this one ignorant girl that goes on and does something that basically causes the whole community to go into an upheaval.
Yeah.
I definitely think that with a large portion of them, they're only doing it to get noticed. They want their 15 minutes.
Right. That's very possible as well. I do believe
that there is a great deal of people out there with those specific intentions, because, you know, there's an old comedy song from a group called the Arrogant Worms, and the song is called "History is Made by Stupid People." And the line in the chorus at the end is, "If you want to place in the history books, do something dumb before you die." So that's basically the way I feel sometimes when it comes to these people who claim they're ignorant. I seriously think that they have other intentions and just want to get noticed. Now, could I be wrong? Most of the time, I'm hoping that it's most of the time that I am wrong. Yeah. But I always have a feeling in the back of my mind that it's the other way around.
And I fully believe that with some it is.
Don't spill that tea, by the way.
Nope. I'm not going to spill the tea today. I'm just sharing it.
That's one of those lines that I never heard of until BookTube. I mean, I have coffee recap, and I'm not spilling my
coffee. It's funny because spilling the tea, I think, actually came from the beauty community.
Oh.
I think that's where it started, and then it made its way over here because we're more tea and coffee drinkers, so.
Oh, well, who knew? Who knew?
Yeah.
But I remember what it was like before when the controversies first started to hit. And I still feel that now there's a lot more booktubers in the booktube community specifically and other communities as well where they're basically just making videos saying enough is enough, people, just grow up.
Yeah. April just confirmed that spilling the tea did come from the beauty community.
Thank you, April. Yeah, so that's the way that I feel about that. I mean, I just think that now people, I mean, like, let's take a major name in the booktube community. When Francina Simone says something, everybody listens.
Yeah.
So when she talked about how so I remembered a couple of videos that she made where she said, you know, stop judging people on the books they read, just let them read what they want to read, and that's that, you know?
Yeah.
And I just get really upset when there are just still other people out there that still don't understand that not everybody wants to be like you. Everybody is different and everybody wants to just...
Everyone is an individual. We all have individual opinions. We all have individual tastes. They might align with other people's, but sometimes they're not gonna, and that's fine.
Yeah, we should say those types of things to someone named Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and see what she says. And now the tea has officially been spilt.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to, and I have no issue saying it. But anyway, let's go into the next question. And this is the sixth question, which was the one that I was very excited to ask you.
Okay.
Being a business owner,
Okay.
are you nervous about possibly being doxxed if your opinion doesn't fit the narrative?
No. Not at all. You know, I'm in a community that's very accepting of people of all opinions, walks, looks, and everything. So in my line of work, I don't worry about it.
That's great.
If I were like in an office or something, not in a salon, that might be a totally different discussion that we would be having. But for the kind of business that I'm in, I don't worry about it at all.
Bravo. That is such a great thing to hear because, you know, I know that there's like so many people out there, especially my own mother, who says to me, don't talk about politics when you're at your office. You have no idea how people are going to think about you. You know what? I don't know why anybody shouldn't, because I feel that, because it's like I always talk to people who think differently. I want to know what's going on the other side. Just because
Exactly.
I just want to know how people feel. Because one of the people on my team, she is definitely on the other side of the political spectrum than I am in. But we always have such amazing, fruitful conversations. And at the end of every conversation, I just say to her, I love that we have these conversations. You really teach me, and I just feel like such a better person that I'm actually talking to somebody with a rational mind. You know,
Right.
I want people to understand that even if you don't agree with other people, you can still find common ground in other areas.
This is a piece of advice I was given on during the wedding ceremony of my first marriage, which is a really funny place to have gotten this piece of advice, considering how things turned out. But the bishop that was marrying us told us that we should strive to disagree agreeably. You can have a different opinion than someone, but you can do it in a way that's not toxic and hateful and hurtful. You can do it in a way where it's like, okay, that's your opinion and I accept that and I acknowledge that. And my opinion's different and that's okay too. So it's something that I've just incorporated into my entire life, into my entire being. People can disagree, but they can disagree agreeably as long as you both come at it with level heads. And I've led to many deep and fruitful discussions with people that I feel very differently about on certain points in life because of that piece of advice, because we both approach it from a place where we don't insist that the other person feels the way we feel.
That is an excellent piece of advice to get on your wedding day, because all I got from my friends and guests on my wedding day was just remember those two important words. Yes, dear. But no, I agree with you. I mean, sometimes I get into some real heated debates with my wife. And the funny thing is, when my wife and I first met, we were pretty much on the exact same side in regards to a lot of political and social things that were affecting the world. To a certain degree, the whole fiasco of BookTube is to blame for my change. Because when I saw my good friend Brief O'Shea's powder keg video show up, my eyes just like blew wide open. I was like, what is she talking about? What is all of this? And that was when I started learning and learning and learning. And I was like, oh, I don't want to vote for Hillary Clinton anymore.
Oh yeah.
I didn't vote anyway, but that's beside the point. I had no shame in saying
that woman
it.
was bought and paid for, and that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I didn't vote, so I have no
Neither
complaints.
did
I have no, yeah, and that's another thing that people need to understand. Voting is not a mandatory thing. You have the right to
completely
vote.
optional, yeah.
Exactly. You have the right to vote. You just don't, you are not mandated to vote unless you live in Australia. Apparently I heard that if you don't vote in Australia, you get fined $10.
Interesting.
Which I think is ludicrous.
$10.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I do that. I'm like, I think it was Lewis Black who said it best. Like, you know, when it comes to political candidates, it's like, we all know that one way or another you're getting shit. The only difference is what's the smell.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, like, I feel that that is the only way to go about it. We've got to talk more, and we've got to be brave to talk about these things in public spaces. Because
when it comes to my workspace, there was one thing I forgot to mention.
Oh yeah?
I live in an area that dominantly feels very similarly to the way I feel. So I've never felt afraid to discuss anything.
So you're completely okay with not want. So you don't want to live in an echo chamber. You want to know what else is out there.
Oh, of course, completely.
And that's something that I also think is the problem with a lot of people. It's just like they don't want to know other opinions. They think that disagreeing matters is hate speech, which is so strange to me.
Yeah, well, sometimes it can be hate speech depending on the person it's coming from. But sharing a general opinion that's not your own isn't necessarily hate speech.
Absolutely. And I also appreciate that they're constantly still bringing these types of topics up in the news. Like, there's a lot of people that say that hate speech should not be protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution, but even the people who classify themselves on the left side of center say, unfortunately, you're wrong. Hate speech is protected by the First Amendment so long as you're not invoking threats or violence.
Exactly.
And I feel that if you want to take that further and just say that all hate speech is bad, I truthfully feel that that's a very slippery slope in regards to people's actual individual freedoms, because
I agree.
That's one of the few things that I appreciate about the kind of government that has been in America ever since America became its country. I believe that the power of the individual is so much more important than the power of the collective, because when you take the collective, let me break it down into simplest terms, people. Watch an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation and look at the Borg. That's the collective. Oh my gosh.
Watch the most recent episode of The Orville.
I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, how have you not watched this? Oh my gosh. Go watch it. After we're done, watch it. It's amazing.
I cannot watch it because my wife has to watch it with me. We're 3 episodes behind.
Oh my gosh, no!
I didn't even know you watched it.
Me. It's a 2-parter, so it's not even finished. It'll finish next week.
I didn't even know you watched it. My day just got a little bit brighter.
Oh my gosh, how did you not know? I talk about the Orville all the time.
I have been getting to the point where I am literally not seeing half my tweets and half my YouTube comments. Life is taking
the Orville. Oh my gosh, my husband and I are obsessed.
It is one of the best shows out there. I love it so much. My wife was
so good.
Yeah, my wife was heartbroken when oh shoot, I'm gonna forget her name. Alara, when she left the show. Yeah, she was so upset.
Well, the reason for that is her and Seth MacFarlane had been dating, and that ended very badly. That's why she left the show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But they didn't kill her off, so she does have the option after some time to come back if they can.
Oh no, she had a beautiful send-off.
Yeah.
She had a beautiful send-off. So anyway,
but I quite like the girl that they've replaced her with. So.
Which I still have not seen.
Ah, you're so behind.
I told you. I told you. At this point in time, the person who has that position is still Patrick Warburton in that elephant makeup. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Patrick Warburton, but my wife is flat out disgusted by him.
I love Patrick Warburton, but that character is so bad for me. Oh my gosh.
Anyway, we're going off on a tangent here. We got 9 minutes left.
We don't need an Orville tangent today.
Do you want to do an Orville live show on your channel at some point in time? We'll talk Orville.
Sure. After the end of season 2, we'll do one. How about that?
I would love that. I will definitely rewatch the first season. I've got it on DVD. So
there we go.
Yeah. So anyway, the final question that I have for you is, do you feel that we will see? Actually, let me try and see if I can read my handwriting here. Wow, this episode has turned into a completely unanticipated animal. I did not anticipate where this episode was going to go.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Not your fault. It's completely not your fault. It's my fault. But anyway, I said, do you feel that we will see less discussion the more often that we bring these specific kinds of topics to light? And what I mean by that is, do you think that we will find more common ground in the future and less debate, or do you think that we will eventually find a happy medium, or do you just think things are going to get worse?
Oh, that is a very difficult question because that involves a lot of other people than me.
I want to know what you think personally about yourself. Like, what would you like to see?
I would definitely hope we can all find a happy medium. I really think some of these topics have been beat like a dead horse for way too long, and we don't need to keep rehashing the same conversations because those things are already changing, but I guess they're not changing in a way that person likes or whatever. But I just wish people would just kind of chill out, mellow out, advocate what their feelings are and what they feel is important in the community, but not badger everybody else to necessarily hop on the hype train and go with them. Does that make sense?
Yes. If you want to expand upon it a little bit more, feel free.
These whole big trends in digging apart topics that don't need to keep being dug apart just are getting old. So it's at a point where if it happens too often, everybody loses interest in the topic as a whole. But it's one of those things where you also have to, make sure you advocate what you're passionate about often enough that you're heard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm on the same page with you. I feel that I think it's just getting stupid at this point in time where everybody is, well, not everybody, but certain groups are basically looking at everything now under the sharpest of microscopes. I think the thing that I'm really getting upset about is people digging up things that happened like 40 years ago and saying that did you hear about this John Wayne interview with Playboy?
Oh, God.
I mean, okay, the guy was a racist. That's not okay, but we have to understand that it was
the time frame in which he was living where a lot of people felt the exact same way he did.
It's a different time. Or the whole thing going back to that whole controversy where people felt that even statues of George Washington needed to be taken down because he was a slave owner. Look, slavery is bad, but slavery happened. And I always say, these types of things, we can't erase them because those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it.
Exactly.
And the part that really upsets me is that when people have these kinds of conversations and say, if you believe that George Washington should still be an American hero, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you are against women. what people also need to understand is that this is the way you're going to keep, if you're going to keep attacking people, saying this exact same kind of rhetoric for everything, like you're a racist if you didn't think Black Panther was a good movie, you're going to set your want for change back like 2 decades. You're not helping the situation.
Well, that happens in books too. People judge like feminist reasoning and all sorts of like tropes in literature now and things we look for in literature now. They're judging a book that was written 20 to 30 years ago on that same standard when they have to take into account that 20 to 30 years ago, it was a very different discussion being had. So, yeah, there's going to be some things that you would now deem problematic in this book, but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad book for its time.
Exactly. And I also saw a video recently where someone was talking about their favorite slam poetries. And I think one of the ones that was featured in the video was very interesting. It's like, I can't remember it exactly, but it was basically like, you won't let people read To Kill a Mockingbird because the N-word is in there, but you will allow them to, like, you know, see like a porno movie or something like that. I don't know what it exactly is. Like, what's the more irrational thing here? I feel that people need to know that this was the way that people were. This is the way that different races of people interacted with each other. It was a bad place. And I think that the whole topic with race relations today is not improving because while people want the change, there are a couple of people within that group that are just swinging the pendulum the other way. Like, yes, for a very long time, white people were predominant and white people did horrible things to Black people. But now let's all just say that white people are bad.
Let's swing it the opposite direction.
Black people do bad things to white people. You know, that's, I don't agree with that entirely at all. Entirely is not even the right word. I don't agree with that, period.
Yeah.
The only way for people to get to understand each other is to invite them. Let them talk. It's like one of the big hot button topics right now. Look at what's going on with Brie Larson and Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel right now isn't even out in theaters, and now there are less people that want to go see this movie because she made a stupid statement saying, I don't want men interviewing me. I want women to interview me, or I want more women and less men. I'm like, men are going to see your movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And you want to know and here's my question. What if they like it? Are you seriously going to say it doesn't matter because they're men?
Exactly. I mean, again, that's just coming from a place of ignorance on her part, I really think.
Yeah, and especially with a lot of things that have happened very recently in Hollywood. And we're definitely going to notice that in the Oscars tonight, considering that there is no host. I am not going to be surprised if this year's Oscars...
There's no host? How did I miss that news?
There's no host. It was supposed to be Kevin Hart. But because Kevin Hart made some jokes that were anti-LGBTQ 10 years ago, they said that the Academy was basically forced to throw him out. And he apologized once. But apparently the apology was not good enough. And you want to know what he said? I said my piece. I'm done. And the Oscars even tried to invite him back because now nobody wants to be the host. Because now everybody has offended somebody at some point in time. So
exactly.
Hollywood, I think, has done more damage than good in regards to controversial topics.
I'm not arguing that point.
Yeah, but anyway, that is where we're going to have to leave it, everybody. I appreciate everybody who came to visit. Thank you very much for watching. It was a wonderful conversation. Shaela, thank you so much for joining me today. It was wonderful.
Anytime.
And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you back next time because we've got an amazing topic coming up, one that I think we can all get a true learning experience out of. But until that time comes around, I am Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome, looking forward to bringing you guys another great topic, but more importantly, another amazing YouTuber to discuss it with. So I'll see you on the next one, everybody. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. If you're new here and want to see more of what my channel has to offer, please click on the link to my last video, or hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my uploads. Content of all sorts is posted here quite often, so trust me, you do not want to fall behind. I will see you in the comments, and actions speak louder than words.